What is up, movie friends? Welcome back to Raiders of the Lost Podcast. I'm Anthony.
And this is James, and today we're going to be doing an episode on Birdman and The Revenant, both directed by Alejandro Iñárritu. And we actually have a special guest today, Santiago Achaga, who's a South American actor, filmmaker, director. So, Santiago, why don't you introduce yourself, tell everyone about your background and where you're from.
Hi, guys. Thank you for having me here.
Of course.
This is amazing. Actually, I'm an actor, as you said, and a director. I've been living all around the world lately. From the last 4 years, I've been in Argentina, Mexico, Colombia, New York. So I've been acting in shows with Nickelodeon and Televisa and sometimes USA movies, thank God. So it's been quite an experience. Now I have the lucky to be directing music videos mostly for Camilo, which is the #1 Latin American artist right now. If you haven't heard him or listened to it lately, go check it out. It's amazing. And probably the last 4 videos that he had, I've been directing it with his wife, Ella Luna. So if you haven't seen it, check it out.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on your success, and I'm sure you're going to have a lot more after this. And you're also a huge film buff, and that's one of the reasons why we connected. You watch our show, and you hit us up, and we're so glad to have you on here. And let's talk about Alejandro Iñárritu and what he means to you as a filmmaker. I think he's easily one of the most talented directors working today. I mean, this guy won back-to-back Oscars for Best Director with both these movies. They came out in 2014 for Birdman, 2015 in Revenant. So this guy's talent is exceptional.
That's only happened 3 times in history.
For directors, I think it's only happened for actors twice, too, with Tom Hanks and someone else. And Spencer Tracy did it.
That's crazy. I didn't know that. I love that from you guys because you have so many fun facts. That's why I listen to this podcast. Now, this is why I'm a part of it. Actually, I've been doing my research, and I have a lot of fun facts to share along.
Happy to hear that.
The fans love. And the thing with Inarritu, he actually intended to make The Revenant first, but that was delayed because DiCaprio signed on to do Wolf of Wall Street because he does whatever Scorsese's doing because they have that connection as filmmaker and actor. And so Inarritu, he had Birdman in development for years. And so while DiCaprio was making Wolf,
2013,
he made Birdman while he was waiting for DiCaprio's schedule to free up so he can make Revenant.
He's like, I'll casually make one of the most intricate and complex film movies of all time in the time I'm waiting for Leo to finish Wolf of Wall Street.
It's crazy. And what I love about Inarritu is he's part of this, you could say a trifecta of Del Toro and Cuarón. They came up together. A few of them went to school together, and there are 3 filmmakers that I think have defined the Mexican voice in American cinema, and they have made a huge impact on cinema right now.
Absolutely.
Totally. Well, actually, it's fun because I think a lot of people get the recognition to Inarritu with Birdman came out. So I think that was a good background for him, like to do The Revenant, you know, because it was one of probably the hardest movies to make ever, you know, like the nature, like they had to travel all the time, natural lighting, so they had no time. It's quite crazy. And I think the recognition and all those awards that he deserved with Birdman, I think that was a good thing to say, like, okay, you're fine, you can do this crazy movie, you know, win another Oscar.
It kind of introduced him more to American audiences, I think, and global audiences. He did Babel, which is fantastic, in 21 grams, right? And so those movies were great, but not as hugely popular as Birdman was, and then The Revenant, which are now iconic films. And it kind of just exploded him on this platform internationally as a filmmaker. Maybe not a lot of people had heard of him before, like 2013, 2014, but after winning back-to-back Oscars, your name is synonymous with history.
Yeah, and something that he's implemented in his filmmaking with these 2 films especially, which Del Toro has always used, is the use of magic symbolism and magic realism, where he adds these surrealist magical elements to his films, especially in Birdman. And there's a lot of it actually in The Revenant as well, we'll talk about. And it's something that came to prominence in Mexican cinema and just Latin American cinema over the last few decades, of adding that magic realism to movies that were being filmed to be very realistic, but then adding that magical element makes it feel incredible in terms of the storytelling. The best way to support Raiders of the Lost Podcast is become a patron at patreon.com/Raiders of the Lost Podcast. You'll get perks like personalized messages, personalized videos, our podcast schedules for upcoming episodes. Top tier patrons get a monthly shout out on the podcast, and you'll also be entered into monthly
monthly giveaway contests for only patrons. Head on over to our new website, RaidersOfTheLostPodcast.com, to check out all of our sources of content, our merch, and custom movie posters. Yeah, and I think the cinematography of both films are kind of add to that magical element too, where Birdman obviously is the illusion of that entire continuous one take, whereas The Revenant, there are scenes like that, like the opening battle where the Ree tribe comes and attacks the fur traders. Has that same aesthetic of a long take, but Birdman, there's actually 16 visible cuts in the film, versus Revenant, there are obviously clearly probably hundreds of cuts in that movies, but both elements are part of his style, which if you could talk about with Quran too, he has that style of like long takes. Like Children of Men is one of my favorite movies of all time that has probably the most incredible long take I've ever seen in my life.
I love this really long takes. I think that's one of his most iconic things that you can recognize him, right? Like this big lenses, like wide angles, wide lenses and like this long takes. But also like if you can tell the difference between one and the other. Like for an example, you have like it's the same style, but in Birdman you have these long hallways, right? And a lot of dialogue. Like everything is going on all the time, and you can feel the pressure of this guy. You can feel how he's between two walls and between like all the opinions of other people, and how he is carrying this weight of doing this right. And in the other hand, you have like this wide angles, but it's totally the opposite. It's like him against nature, and that's it. Like he's in the middle of nowhere, and it feels so different, right? It's kind of the same technique. He's it's totally his own technique, but I love how he can work between that technique in this two different movies, and it feels so different one from the other, you know?
Yeah, those wide lenses. He uses a master as a wide lens, which is kind of unusual for a big Hollywood production like this. And it makes it feel that ultra realism, makes it feel like you're there, because, you know, that's what real life looks like to us with human eyes, these wide lenses and then these long takes. And also it's just incredible to see those wide lenses to create this like POV kind of feeling for an audience member, where you feel like you're there with Hugh Glass suffering in the wilderness, and you also feel like you're there with all these actors behind the scenes of this Broadway production walking through these hallways. And like even the claustrophobic feeling that we get throughout the film Birdman, as the camera kind of gets closer and closer into Riggins' character with this wide shot, and you just feel like you're him at sometimes.
It makes you feel his anxiety and his stress, and the combination of the wide lens that Emmanuel Lubezki likes to use. He likes to bring it close to the actors' faces, and that it kind of warps the image in a little bit. It kind of, especially it happens with DiCaprio a lot, and happens a few shots in Birdman, where when you bring a wide lens and bring it close to the subject, the subject will kind of, the look of them will warp a little bit. And I think that adds to the effect that he's trying to convey in terms of what the character is experiencing. And there are so many shots in The Revenant where most of the image is out of focus because it's not a macro lens. So when you put it up to the close to the image, most of it's going to be out of focus and blurry.
And Leo's breathing on the camera sometimes.
Exactly. So he makes you aware of the lens in a lot of ways, and making you aware of the lens. Also, they allow things like water and blood to pour onto the lens, so there will be droplets of water or blood on it, and that kind of takes you out of the film experience. It kind of makes you feel even more like you're there, documentary style, like you're actually watching it being filmed.
That's
so that adds to the realism as well.
I love that when the bear breathes near to the camera, that because that's such an important moment, right? I don't want to skip ahead.
No, it's fine.
But
Go ahead.
But at that moment, it's such a moment when you totally feel that you are there, and when the bear is so close to the camera that he breathes and then everything's steam, it's like, oh, so that's probably how he feels, right?
It's visceral, yeah.
I mean, you can kind of feel the breath, but I think that Lubezki learned the lesson from Children of Men. There's that long take when Clive Owen's character is trying to save the woman, I can't remember her name, and he's traveling through that war zone, and a soldier next to him gets shot, and the blood pours onto the lens, and that was a real effect. They actually had a real blood effect on that soldier, and it wasn't supposed to hit the lens, and so they thought maybe we might have to redo the shot or edit out the blood stain completely from the camera lens. But then Lubezki convinced Cuarón to keep it in, and so he kept the blood stain on the lens for most of the shot. And they slowly, as that shot continues, they slowly digitally erase droplets here and there so that by the end of that shot, it's completely gone. But Lubezki convinced Cuarón it has a more powerful effect if you can actually see the blood on the lens because it makes you feel like you're right there with Clive Owen.
Yeah, that actually makes me think of two things. The first one is obviously Emmanuel Lubezki is one of the best cinematographers alive, and he also won back-to-back Oscars for best cinematography.
3 in a row.
So he did, because what did he do else?
That's insane.
Yeah, 3 in a row.
That's totally
What's
insane.
the other one he won for?
What is it?
Gravity?
Gravity.
Yeah, you're right. So he
Gravity,
won for
Birdman, Revenant.
That's incredible. And also he does Terrence Malick's films, so he's visually one of my favorite cinematographers out there. And also how you brought up that the long take, and he learned his lesson about to keep that effect if splatter or something or debris falls onto the lens. That also applies to how hard and difficult it is to shoot these kinds of movies in this style of these long takes, whereas when you're on a regular movie set, you're doing hundreds of takes with different camera angles. But think about the way you film Birdman, especially where it looks like one long take, but it's really 16 takes. You have a cast and crew that you have to hide behind the camera. You can't really mess up in takes because you can't go into edit. You can't edit these takes after in post-production. You have to get every scene shot in one take, and you have to nail it every single time. So just the choreography, not of just the actors to know their beats and blocking with in concurrence with their lines and dialogue, but behind the camera we have crew members, we have audio guys, we have lighting guys, and throughout the filming there, as the camera moves around the sets, they're moving the lights, they're moving the audio gear, they're moving all of them behind them. So it's a wild and super complicated style of filmmaking that it results in amazing films, but I'm sure it's so complicated and stressful to do.
Yeah.
Totally. I think people who actually been in movie sets, right, and know how hard it is to do a movie, because it's really hard, even when you're cutting, even when you have to do a 2-page scene, right? It's complicated and it's stressful, and everything you do, it's a decision, and it's like a choreography, right? It's a dance, but this is another type of dance. This is I don't even know how to explain it. Like, if you want to do a 2-3 minutes long shot, it's so hard. Like, I've been thinking the whole movie, poor guy, the first AC, the one, the focus pull, the focus puller, is that
Focus
how you call it, right? Focus puller, yeah.
It's the hardest job.
Poor guy, he must be so stressed, because you can fix a lot of things in post, but focus, that's not one of them. So if he screwed up, like, that was it.
The focus puller is the unsung hero of these movies, for sure.
Totally.
Just the cast, the crew itself, just be able to work with the directors on this vision, and like, just imagine filming Birdman again. You're in these small sets, you're walking through these hallways, and you have probably 15 people behind the camera. So the complexity of it is absurd, but it does result in amazing results.
Yeah, and Birdman, it wasn't a set they built. That was the actual theater in New York on Broadway. So it wasn't like they built in hallways that were. Usually there are false walls and doors, so you can just build a wall and remove it to put a camera in it. But with this, they just worked within the confines of the actual building inside New York. So that made it even harder to film.
This episode is brought to you by our friends at manscaped.com. Use our coupon code Raiders of the Lost at checkout for 20% off and free shipping. Breaking news, Manscaped has just released their brand new 4.0 lawnmower trimmer, which is now available for purchase in the United States and Canada. It is the best clippers I've ever used in my life. Now I have two. I have the 3.0 and I have the 4.0, and these are the best, and their products are being used by over 2 million men right now. Get on manscaped.com. Use our coupon code Raiders of the Lost at checkout for 20% off and free shipping. They've sent us their deodorizers, their boxer briefs, their t-shirts, their colognes. Everything is high quality. I recommend getting their performance packages. It comes with a bunch of different items for a cheaper price, consolidated. So definitely use our coupon code at their website today for free shipping and 20% off. Raiders of the Lost.
Do you guys want to get into Birdman?
Yeah, let's get into Birdman. Yeah, let's do it. Which came out in 2014, written by Alejandro, obviously, Nicholas Giacoboni, Alexander Dinelaris, and Armando Bo, based on the play by Raymond Carver, starring Michael Keaton, Edward Norton, Emma Stone. Again, this one, best cinematography, best director, best picture, best original screenplay, and it follows a washed-up superhero actor who attempts to revive his fading career by writing, directing, and starring in a Broadway production.
I think the most obvious thing about Birdman on the surface is the comparison and parallel to Michael Keaton in his career, because even in the film Birdman, the last Birdman, I think it was Birdman 3, was the last sequel he did. That came out in 1992, they say. And that was the year that Batman Returns came out, which is Michael Keaton's Batman sequel.
The last film of him doing Batman, right?
Yeah, exactly. And Michael Keaton, he was a very big star for the 80s and 90s, but then his career kind of took a downturn. And before Birdman, his last leading role was in 2008. And so it was a long time before I think he lost his ability to lead movies in terms of audiences wanting to see him. And so this movie revived his career, very much how the play eventually revives Riggin in his personality and in his persona as an actor.
Yeah, it's kind of like how when David Fincher made Gone Girl, he picked Ben Affleck because he's lived that experience of being destroyed by the media, having like a downturn in life. And then Riggin is clearly a representation of Michael Keaton's career, like you said. And also even Mike Shiner, played by Edward Norton, that's supposedly a satire on the way he works on set, where he doesn't learn the script and he's constantly questioning the lines of the dialogue and the script, and he's like kind of co-directing on set, which is probably why he's not the Hulk anymore.
That was rumored why he didn't get the Hulk
because
again.
he's so hard. He's hard to work with, so he's making fun of himself in a way. Then also Emma Stone, she's related to the superhero genre too, where she was in 2 Spider-Man movies. So I think he purposely picked actors who were in these big Hollywood superhero films to kind of critique and satire Hollywood itself in terms of losing artistic vision to just sell out and make these low artistic, massive commercial success movies just for money.
I think it's so important from Inarritu that learned that, I mean, all of this is part of his vision, right? And it's not just the fact that he could tell all the people in his crew what his vision was in doing this in just one take, right? Which is completely hard, and that's so honorable and respectable to be able to communicate, because that's the director job, communicate and tell the people that you're working with your vision. But also he has this idea that, well, if like he has a lot of influence with foreigner and Europe films, such as like Godard,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that. I never learned the names in English, so I'm sorry if I say something wrong. I just say it as I usually say it.
No worries.
I just wish I could say Inarritu like you. Inarritu.
yeah. Or Tarkovsky, like Tarkovsky has a lot of reference in his films. And in fact, this 2 directors, they cast people in their films which they have similarities to the actors that are playing it, the characters. And I think that's amazing. That just complete his vision in another level. He's not just casting people because they're good for the role, but he's just making this whole universe so when you go in, you can't get out.
That's a great reference to Tarkovsky, because I feel like DiCaprio's character, Hugh Glass, there are a lot of moments that remind me of Stalker, Tarkovsky's film.
Yeah.
Especially that scene in the church where he finds that like destroyed church. So there's a lot of references to that filmmaker, who's a great Russian filmmaker from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And I think there's a specific reason why Alejandro used a long take for this film. And I think it's not just for the gimmick, not just because it's cool to do. I think he's trying to translate what it's like to watch a stage play. Whereas if you go to a theater to watch a play, there's no cuts. Everything unfolds before you. They're changing the sets. The actors are coming in and out of wardrobe. And so I think Alejandro wanted to translate that experience into this film for film-going audiences. When you watch a movie, it feels like you're watching a play because there are no cuts.
Yeah, even though days pass, Riggin even spends the night, he gets drunk and falls asleep on that stoop, and it's the next day, and it still all looks like one long take, and it's a great effect. And he's such an interesting character because he has this like dual personality going on, where he has like his inner Birdman who's trying to get him to reclaim his past and do Birdman 4, and then telling him he's nothing without him. And Riggin, his life is kind of falling apart, and he thinks that this play is going to be his saving grace, because he, more than anything, he's trying to pursue what he wants is to be respected and be a respected artist, because doing the Birdman movies kind of critically, people don't take him seriously, but he kind of wants to be who Mike Shiner is on stage. Him and Shiner are sort of opposite characters, whereas Riggin wants to be able to be a respected artist, and then Mike Shiner, his biggest fault is he can't really live outside of the stage. He can't even feel emotions off the stage. So there's sort of opposing forces in there. You could call them protagonists and antagonists if you want.
I think there's a great story that Riggin tells, which perfectly defines what his character is. And it's that story he tells about he has a dream where he's on a plane and he sees George Clooney up a couple seats ahead of him, and then he imagines the plane crashing. Yeah. And then he just feels disappointment because he knows the next day the paper will have a on the front page of the paper will have a picture of George Clooney saying George Clooney dies in plane crash, and Reagan won't even make the story. And that's his biggest fear, is that no one will ever remember him. I think that's the defining characteristic of his character.
Totally. I think that line is so great because it's telling you a lot of information about the character and his motivation. It's not giving to you like, well, I'm afraid of this to happen. It's just like in another line of text under it. So I think that just explains in another level how good Inarritu is. Like he, in his head, it's so good to give the audience just a little bit of enough hints to understand it, but you can make the puzzle together, you know? Another thing that I have that I think we're gonna get into it soon, it's about this powers that he have, right? That you are like all over the movie. You
the
don't
telekinesis.
Yeah. You don't know if it's real or not. But I think a lot of people just get stuck in the idea of if he's actually able to do it, even though you have some scenes that they show that he's moving everything, he's destroying everything. It's not telekinesis, but this idea and this metaphor about this power is something that he's the one who can see it, right? It's about his character. He knows that he's able to do great stuff, but nobody else can see that.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good way to see it. And then when someone else get into the room, you see that he's not doing it because they don't see his potential.
Exactly. It reminds me so much of Pan's Labyrinth, actually, by Guillermo del Toro, which we just talked about, where is Ophelia's fairy tale real or not? It's kind of up for the audience to decide, and the filmmakers kind of put hints into whether or not it's true or fake. And I think with Inarritu, with this film, all of those situations of him thinking he's doing magic or showing us that he's like closing doors or smashing stuff, Inarritu disproves it usually with a scene right afterwards, like when he's tearing apart his room and then his partner of the play, he comes in, Zach Galifianakis' character, he watches him tearing it apart, so we know that it's actually in his mind. Then when he's flying through the city and he arrives at the theater and he walks into the door after he lands, but then a taxi driver's like, hey, you gotta pay me your money.
Yeah.
So Inarritu, he disproves it in every shot of him using magic, except for the opening scene where he's floating, like meditating.
Yeah.
They don't show, and he doesn't disprove that. And also the last shot of the film when he supposedly jumps or flies out of the window, he doesn't disprove that. Instead, he shows his daughter Sam looking out the window, looking down and not seeing his body on the floor, but then looking up and assuming we can think that she's seeing him fly. So Inarritu is just playing with this idea of realism versus magic, or subjective realism, objective realism, and it's kind of up to us to decipher whose reality we're watching. Is it Reagan's reality? Is it Sam's reality? Is it the audience's reality? And I think it's just a fun thing for us to interpret for ourselves.
Before we continue, I got to tell you about movieposters.com, the #1 place to get your posters online today. Movieposters.com has teamed up with us to offer a very special promo code. Use Raiders15, again, Raiders15 at movieposters.com to get a 15% discount on your order. Movieposters.com has pretty much every movie imaginable, all sorts of sizes, framing, backlighting, whatever you want, they got it. If you're passionate about movies, if you're passionate about television shows, there's no better way to express that than by decking your place out with a ton of movie posters. Again, use our coupon code Raiders15, again, Raiders15, to get 15% off your order at movieposters.com. I think also you can look at the telekinesis powers as a way of Reagan trying to control his life, trying to control the world around him, because he's lost control of the play, he's lost control of his career, he's lost control of his family. His life is in disarray, and so his mental interpretation of dealing with that is him fabricating this fantasy of using powers to control everything around him. So I think that's him trying to deal with the fact that he can't control anything in his life.
Yeah, I think the last scene, I mean, I'm not going to lie. The first time I seen it, I've been so concerned. I was like, is he flying or not? Is this real? I just wanted to know. But then I break free about that idea, and I understood that it was, I took this metaphor all over the movie, that his power, this telekinesis that he has, is just related to his success, right? And what he's able to do. And at the end, he he makes it. He's new. He accomplished. He did a great
the play is
performance.
a success. Yeah.
The play is a success. So now the daughter can see his power, right? Now the daughter can see this ambition and this how good he can actually be. So I think that's the metaphor that I just took for myself. I mean, I really don't think there's a good or wrong way to take it. Right?
No, I think that's a great way to look at it, because if you think about that scene right before he jumps out the window, we see him. He's in the hospital bed, and he has a new nose. He just had surgery. And his bandage, it looks like it's the beak of a bird. So it actually looks very similar to his old Birdman costume.
Yeah, it's like a cowl. Yeah.
Yeah, so that bird cowl. And so you can look at it as he's combined both his success as Birdman with his success in the play and his former failure as Riggin. And so he's blended them together and meshed together the success of Birdman with Riggin's failure. And so you can see he's finally won. He accomplished his goal and succeeded, and so now he's become this new version of Riggin in a way.
Yeah, but although he has accomplished what he wanted like the respect and the acclaim of being an artist and a respected actor from the critics, and he wanted his popularity back that he sort of lost, and now he has this opportunity. You know, Zach Galifianakis' character is like, we're gonna make a movie where this is gonna be playing all over the world, this play, and it kind of ties to this idea of the unexpected virtue of ignorance, which is the alternate title to the film, where although he's accomplished what he wanted, his friend's next line of him when he's talking to him in the hospital bed and he's not saying anything, he's like, this is what you wanted. And then Riggin seems to be a little disappointed, like maybe this wasn't what I wanted, because why isn't he super excited? But I think it's really about what he really realizes what he truly wanted was a relationship repaired with his daughter, because that's I think the end of the film. It shows the repaired relationship, or a semi-repaired relationship between him and Sam rests on his chest, and they have their first like father-daughter intimate moment that we've seen on camera. And so I think it's that he also gets before the play ends, during the intermission, he's talking to his wife, and he confesses to his wife his wrongs, and he apologizes basically, and she kisses him. So he gets love and affection from his wife, gets love and affection from his daughter. So I think now he also has that approach to life and work like Mike Shiner has, where he doesn't care what anyone thinks anymore, where the whole film, it's so funny and ironic, where all these actors and theater people are saying they're better than people in Hollywood because they don't care what people think, but all they really do is care about what people think and what critics say about their work and their plays. And so now he's like Shiner, where he truly doesn't care, and he's kind of got that blissful ignorance.
I think when I first saw that final scene, I kind of feel that he was so disappointed that he failed again. He tried to commit suicide twice, right? One when he goes into the sea, and now he tried to do it again, and he failed. He shot his nose off, but he didn't kill himself. So I think he's kind of disappointed, and at the same time, it's like a bittersweet sensation, because he knows that he did a great performance, and now the play is a success. But when he stands up, and he goes to the bathroom, we see Birdman again. So he knows that he's not going to be able to take that out from his life, and he's going to be there always, even though now he's a big success. And that's something actually really interesting. When the film starts, the first time you see Regan's face, because the first shot, he's you can see his back, right? When you see his face in the mirror, you see his face at the same time you see the Birdman sign at the back. So it's a good way for Inarritu to tell you that there's no Regan without Birdman. It's no Birdman without Regan. So they're both one, and you know that there's gonna be that fight between them along the film.
Yeah, he's like
Riggin will never be able to escape Birdman. He'll never be able to satisfy that need he has for admiration and that need he has for attention and love from other people. That will never escape him. So that's a great point right there with that metaphor.
And I think the character of Sam, she's actually a lot more similar to Riggin than either of them will want to admit. And they're both impulsive. They both have these seem to be mental health issues, where she's an addict. She's probably depressed at some point of her life or going through that. And Riggin clearly has dual personality disorder or something like that. But they have a lot of similarities, where Sam actually has bird tattoos on her shoulder, which I think Inarritu is just trying to show you right away. Like, look at this tattoo, and that connects her to Riggin with Birdman. But they also are on this path together where their repaired relationship, again, I think that's one of the most important elements for Riggin's character in order to feel like he exists again, because the play, you could say, and the character he's playing in that play, it's the reverse of himself, where he's the one that was cheating on his wife and his wife caught him, versus in the play, he's the person that catches his wife. And the lines that he says in the play are really telling of his character, Riggin, where he's like, I don't exist anymore. I don't know who I am anymore. And that's why he wants to kill himself. Just like after he confesses to his wife about why he did that. He confesses that he tried to kill himself in the ocean, but the jellyfish saved him.
Yeah, and Riggin his entire life has been a very selfish person, where he even asks his wife why they broke up, not understanding that it was all his fault. And he also, when he thinks that Sam is using again and he finds that little joint, he tells her, he says, why are you doing this to me? Like, he's saying, why are you doing this to me? So he's not thinking about his daughter. He's not thinking about his wife. All he cares about is how things affect him. And he victimizes himself. So no matter what the situation, no matter what the conflict is, he always acts like he is the victim and other people are attacking him.
This is such a fun topic because actually Inarritu says that this idea, he got this idea when he turned 50, right? And he started this crisis about, and it's probably something that happens a lot in this situation, the fear of being forgotten, the fear of not doing something good enough or just being remembered as mediocre.
Yeah, mediocre.
Okay, cool, great. So I think that's great, and people who actually are related to this film, I don't know, like theater actors or movie directors or producers or writers, I think they all feel so connected to that film because of that. They know that it's something that happens eventually, and even when you have accomplished something great in your life, maybe that's not good enough for you. Like, maybe he did Birdman and that was a big success and everybody wants to do Birdman again, but he doesn't want to do that because he knows that's just like a medium level. He knows that for actors and people who are in this same category, that's not good enough. That's just not great. That he needs to do something great, because otherwise he's not going to be respected by his co-workers.
And the flaw with Riggin, which I think how you illustrate at the end of the film when he repairs his relationship with his daughter and his ex-wife, is his entire motivation for his whole life is wanting to be remembered by the world. So wanting to be remembered. But if he's remembered by the world for his artistic success, it comes at the expense of being forgotten by his family. And so I think he's trying to grasp, like, which is more important, be remembered by the world or to be remembered by my family. So I think he realizes which is more important by the end of the film.
Yeah, and that all ties into the opening text that Inarritu puts at the beginning of the film, which is a quote from Raymond Carver, who wrote the play that the movie and the play that he's making is based off of. And the quote is, "And did you get what you wanted from this life? Even so, I did. And what did you want? To call myself beloved, to feel myself beloved on this earth." And I think, again, the connection with his daughter is the beloved. That's what he's feeling now. Is now he thinks he wanted respect and admiration critically and from audiences and from the world for art, but really all he wanted was love from his daughter.
Actually, that just gave me the cue to clap Emma Stone. I think she did great in this movie. Actually, a fun fact, they say that she was the one who made the most mistakes along the film. And this I can think of his name,
Zach Galifianakis.
Yes, yeah. He was great. They say that he didn't make a mistake barely at all in the whole movie.
Yeah. Ironically, Emma Stone got the Oscar nomination for supporting actor.
Yeah, well, I think she did great.
Yeah.
I think it was a great character, and I love the scenes when she's in the rooftop and she's talking to the actor, which I also forgot. Mike Shiner, yeah. And he says, what did he did he do to you? You know, like what was so wrong that you hate your father? And she's like, well, he was never like around. He was like, is that it? Is that why you hate him? And she kind of realized at that same moment that it was not that bad. It was bad probably, but could be worse. You know, he was just a guy who was working for her and probably his wife.
Yeah, I think what she realizes is that she's maybe placing too much blame on Riggin. And also, I think her best scene is when she shouts at Riggin when Riggin confronts her about the weed. And she basically tears Riggin apart in 1 minute by saying that no one cares about you. You don't even exist because he's not adapting to modern technology. He doesn't have social media. And that the whole play is a charade and nothing's going to come from it. And I think she just opens up in Riggin all the self-doubt that he's been trying to bury inside, and she makes him realize how unimportant he really is. No matter what he does, he's still just like a speck in the universe, and he's not as important as he thinks he is.
Yeah, it's a great point. In that scene, I think that Sam is kind of humbling Riggin and bringing down his ego and his arrogance, and Mike Shiner does the same thing to him too, where Riggin realizes that he's not even close to the talent that Mike Shiner is until the end of the film. He gives that great performance. And also Mike Shiner, you could say with the scene Santiago just brought up on the rooftop, he also kind of humbles Sam in a way and takes away her animosity a little bit from Riggin to realize that although he wasn't there during your birth and he wasn't the best father, he's still a father. He's still there for you. He's still helped provide for you in your life. So I think all these characters are kind of humbling each other. And even Mike Shiner gets humbled towards the end of the film too. He's kind of like this catalyst that starts all this action going on too.
Yeah, and also when Riggin hands Mike Shiner that bar napkin with the author's signature saying that he gave a great performance, Shiner points out that if it's on a cocktail napkin, that means the author was drunk when he saw Riggin perform. So maybe Riggin isn't as good as he thinks he is.
Yeah, but also Shiner maybe isn't as poor as he thinks he is, because in that scene also he's talking about how he's like, Shiner's like, I own this town. I'm what matters here. And then someone comes up behind them and asks for a photo of Riggin. So
and they ask Shiner to take the photo.
Yeah, so Shiner takes the photo. So they're all kind of humbling each other.
Because he says no one cares about Riggin, and then that happens right after it. And so that plays with the idea. So which is more important? Which do people care about? A famous Hollywood actor or a theater actor that no one's heard of?
Yeah. And that scene, that's one of the funniest beats for me. There's like a handful of very good jokes in that movie. That's one of my favorite. But then the other one is where Riggin looks in the mirror. He says that he looks like a turkey with leukemia. Die every time.
Actually, I think one of my favorite scenes in the movie, it's when Regan wakes up after he passed out on the streets. And you see Birdman, right? You see Birdman behind him. And he kind of accepts the idea of being Birdman again. He's like, we can, like Birdman says, like, we can take over this. And then explosions start to happen and the helicopters. And they're just mocking Michael Bay and superhero
Marvel,
movies.
yeah.
Yeah, Marvel. They say that it's kind of similar, like pornographic action. And I love when Birdman, out of the blue, it breaks the fourth wall and start talking to us. They're like, oh, look at their eyes. They're shining. They love this action shit. They don't even care about this philosophical bullshit.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a good moment in the film, because you're captivated by that. Eventually, when that happens, when you see this guy flying and talking to you and exploding, you're like, what is happening? So I think they have a good point out of it.
Yeah, I think he's saying that, it's great to enjoy theater, but it's also important not to act smugly about art, because theater might be a more, philosophical and artistic kind of performance, doesn't take away that. So what if a lot of people love superhero movies? Like, it's not up to one person to decide what's art and what isn't art.
Yeah, I think the film is a satire on both the pretentious nature of the theater world versus the commercial sellout world of Hollywood. And one of my favorite lines in the film that kind of ties into that is where Riggin says popularity is the slutty little cousin of prestige. So they're both kind of hypocritical and they're opposites of each other, just like Shiner and Riggin are opposites of each other. And I think they both represent those worlds where Riggin's the pretentious actor and Riggin's the commercial success actor.
And I think obviously one of the highlights of this movie, production wise, it has to be the score, the drum score by this
amazing.
by the drum. I can't remember his name, but the score he used, it perfectly illustrates the character of Riggin in terms of the chaotic nature of his mind and the looseness of the film itself, and how, just like jazz drumming, it seems like the pacing of the movie is unrelenting. It never slows down, and it's always surprising. And I think that having an improvised drum score for the movie really tied the whole movie together.
Yeah, Antonio Sanchez, did a great score. Unfortunately, he didn't qualify for an Oscar because they said that it wasn't the complete score of the film, because there's other moments where there's music and classical composing that composes it
If
too.
there's music that's not by the composer that's used in very important scenes, it will disqualify the composer from being nominated, because, like you said, they use a lot of pieces from classical music in vital scenes in the movie. And there's one that's repeated a few times, and so that's the reason why he didn't get nominated.
But he did win a Grammy, and he got nominated for like Golden Globes and BAFTAs and everything like that. But it's a fantastic score, and it reminds me so much of Whiplash, where this jazz drumming is just like keeping the energy of the film the whole time. But I mean, in Birdman, it's unrelenting.
And then the magic realism, where they actually show the drummer twice in the movie.
Yeah,
like,
and
he's actually
I
in the.
think
Yeah.
that's one of the highlights of the movie.
Yeah.
You know, like synchronizing those parts of the movie. It's so hard, like doing a sequence shot, and then when you see him, he's playing exactly what you're listening to. It's not as simple as it looks like. So I think it's great. Every time I see the drummer, I'm so excited. I'm pumped. And I think it's a good metaphor about jazz and how like jazz is improvising, and the plays are like all this story that we're looking at it's just another play that we're watching, right? Besides of the play in the movie itself, it looks like and it feels like a play that's being improvised along the film. And the fact that you're listening to this jazz upbeat drums, which the fundamentals of jazz is improvising, it just ties all the film together, as you said.
Yeah, that ties
totally.
into film and theater, where every performance and every scene is different each time, versus a film where that's the take, that's the cut, and that's forever lived on. But every performance is unique.
Want to do some superlatives?
Yeah, let's do some superlatives. And also, what do you guys think happens at the end? Do you think he flies away, or do you think he's dead? Do you think he committed suicide?
I think that it's another form of magic realism, where he's finally discovered what he should be really living for, which is his family and his relationship with his daughter. And I think that's what Sam, it's illustrated magically, but I think that Sam is seeing Riggin accept what really matters in life.
I kind of agree with you. I just think it's a metaphor about his success and the potential that he has, and now his daughter can see that along with the rest of the world. Like, they know that he's a good actor, you know?
Yeah, I think he's on the medical bed the whole time. He never jumped. I think he just looked out, and like it's his subjective magical reality, which is his daughter seeing him fly. I think that's a little bit of what's going on, like what you just said. But all right, let's do some superlatives. So let's start off with, who do you guys think the MVP of this film is?
That's a hard one.
I would say it's Michael Keaton, because he gives an incredible performance. And the movie is really carried by his performance. The camera's on his face so much, and he translates so much of what his character is thinking and feeling. And I think that everyone kind of forgot about Michael Keaton, and then when they saw this movie, they remembered how much talent he has and why he was a big star.
I really think Edward Norton.
Yeah, he's great.
He's my favorite.
He's great.
Like, when he's on screen, I can't stop looking at him.
Yeah,
He's magnetic.
This is my favorite Ed Norton performance.
Yeah, probably.
I think.
He's fantastic in this movie.
Yeah. As a performance, I think like he's my favorite. The character, I think, the one Michael Keaton is doing, I think it's the most completed, probably, because he has so many things in his head and devastating about his family and his work and not being forgotten, but also doing a great work and being watched even by Martin Scorsese in some point when this guy says like he's gonna be there.
Oh, really?
yeah. So then, like, with those little things, you can tell like he cares.
Yeah.
You know, like he says that he doesn't, but he does care, and he just wants approval. He wants approval from the audience, wants approval from the media, he wants approval from his family. He wants everybody to say like, you know, everything that you've been doing, you're right and you accomplish it.
I think it's Emmanuel Lubezki just because the complication of the filmmaking and how much the cinematography adds to the story and everything. And I think he just knocked it out of the park with this movie. It's so impressive to watch.
Deserved the Oscar.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Do you guys have a favorite scene in the movie?
My favorite scene, I would say, is what you mentioned earlier, is when after Riggin gets drunk and he passes out on those steps and he wakes up and Birdman, he's finally accepting Birdman and allowing him to take over. I think that's such a big turning point in the movie. And I think the character of Riggin changes in a positive way. And I think the movie gets a lot more fun after that.
I have this scene when it's the first time we see Edward Norton on the play, right? That he's just being in the stage and Michael Keaton goes there and they start improvising these lines. And I think that scene's so good. Edward Norton makes this face after he changed a text and they see this play evolve and it gets better. And he's like, it cracks me every time. I think
he's like feed me a line. He already knows.
He's
the
like,
script.
forget the script. Come on, let's just do something.
I think that's my favorite scene.
That's a great scene. That's very funny. Yeah.
I think my favorite scene is when Sam yells at Riggin because I think that's the most. That's the start of the catalyst for Riggin and his character changing and a turning point for him and realizing what's important in life. And I think that he needed to be humbled by her to get that going.
Nice. We have 3 different scenes.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Great.
Do you guys have a favorite line from the movie that you can remember or you wrote down?
Yeah, my favorite line is, which you said earlier, is like, I look like a turkey with leukemia.
My favorite line is when the ex-wife is talking to him and she says that you've always confused love for admiration. And that's because he never understood what the difference between them. And he thought that if someone didn't like a movie of his, that means that they didn't like him or love him.
Mine, I think it's the one that you guys said a little bit earlier. It's the one I don't know if I can say it back, but it's when he says popularity is the cousin. What it's exactly
it's the cousin. It's the slutty cousin of Prestige.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
I
think it's so good.
It's really good. The scene of Riggin running through Times Square in his underwear was filmed after midnight, so the amount of real bystanders caught on camera in the shot would be limited, and that the majority of people in frame are hired extras or crew members, actually.
Because the movie Birdman was carefully choreographed and rehearsed well before filming, the editing of the entire film only took 2 weeks to do.
In Birdman, Chef Gordon Ramsay can be seen on a large billboard video screen when Riggin is on the roof near the end of the movie. Chef Gordon Ramsay's mother-in-law is a distant relative to director Alejandro Iñárritu's family. When the director was filming the movie in New York, he would often dine at Chef Gordon Ramsay's restaurant, The London.
There's a great hidden clue in Birdman when Riggin is standing on the roof right before he magically begins flying. If you look in the background of the city, there's actually a poster of Man of Steel, alluding to the fact that he can fly like Superman.
In Birdman, director Inarritu includes paraphernalia from his native land at several points. When Riggin enters the liquor store, the walls are covered in Christmas lights, which are in the form of Mexican chili peppers. When Riggin is walking in his underwear on Broadway, the sound of the famous tamales oaxaqueños that are sold in Mexico can be heard. In the final scene, the sound of the car that sells camotes is also clearly heard. All right. Should we move on to, let's do a quick intermission and then we'll move on to The Revenant. How's that sound?
Cool.
All right. Intermission time.
Let's do it.
Which is brought to you by our friends at Manscaped. Use our coupon code Raiders of the Lost at checkout for 20% off and free shipping from manscaped.com. All right. Let's do our intermission, which is just a fun little trivia guessing game where each of us will ask the others a question. So we got questions for you too. So I'm going to start with the movie quote competition. So let me know if you guys can guess what movie this quote is from. Life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss
Ferris
it.
Bueller's Day Off.
Yeah, he got it.
I feel I'm gonna lose in every single one. So, so in the Matrix, does Neo take the blue pill or the red pill?
Red pill.
Oh, he takes the red pill, yeah.
That was an easy one.
Here's my movie quote. Ready? I ain't ever been no hero. The only battle I seen was in retreat. My foot got shot off by one of my own men. You try and tell that story to your boy and see how he looks at you then.
I know this. Do you know it?
I definitely do not know it.
That's Christian Bale's character in 3:10 to Yuma.
Yeah, that's it.
Let's
yeah.
go.
Yeah, I was not gonna.
You ever seen
Make
that
it.
movie, 3:10 to Yuma?
No,
It's
did
really
not.
it's a
Great
it's a
Western.
Western remake,
Yeah.
and it's Christian Bale and Russell Crowe, the lead actors.
Yeah,
and
it's
really good.
fantastic.
I recommend it.
James Mangold, who made Logan, he directed that.
Yeah.
So good.
All right.
I love that movie.
Yeah.
I love Logan.
All right, guys. Guess this movie release year.
Oof. Okay.
What year did Point Break come out?
Oh, Point Break.
Guys, I suck at this game.
Hold on.
Let's take a guess. Take a guess. The original Point Break, not the new one.
Okay. What?
It's young.
89?
Close.
I'm going 1991.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I was pretty close, actually.
Yeah,
No,
you
you're
were close. Yeah.
The way I figure, I
Cool.
try to do is I just like work back the actor's career and like where they
Yeah.
were.
Totally.
I almost said 92. I was like, no. All right. What year did Die Hard come out?
That's so funny because my pop quiz question is Die Hard.
You should know. You're just on the IMDb page then.
So that's in the 80s for sure.
It has to be the 80s.
I'm not saying anything.
Yeah.
Die Hard's, I'm going to guess 1988.
That's it. Yeah.
Wow.
1988. Yeah.
I swear I didn't even look at it.
We can share that point because I just said the 80s.
Yeah,
so
you wouldn't have said
let's say
88
that-
if he didn't say 80s.
No, I knew it was the 80s. Come on.
Sure you did.
He had a gun on a plane.
That's true. It's true.
Yeah, you could smoke and bring a gun on a plane.
All right. What's
Movie-
the cool trivia question?
All right, this is a movie pop quiz question. All right, so this is funny. In Die Hard, what is the name of the building that John McClane stops the terrorists and robbers in?
I know it.
I know that one. I know Nakatomi Plaza.
Yeah, there we go.
Yes,
There we
let's
go.
go.
That's a good one. That's so funny. We both did Die Hard ones.
It's called being a twin.
All right. So I actually related this to Emmanuel Lubezki, who won 3 Oscars in a row. There have been a few actors that have been nominated for 3 acting Oscars in a row consecutively. Bradley Cooper is one of them. He got nominated 3 years in a row. What 3 movies were they?
That he was nominated for?
Yeah.
Silver Linings Playbook.
Mm-hmm.
American Hustle. American Sniper.
Great.
I'm a genius.
I
I
didn't
win.
think you would get American Sniper.
Yeah, well, that's what happens when you underestimate me. All right, that was fun. So let's move on to The Revenant, which came out in 2015, written by Alejandro and also Mark L. Smith. This film won Best Actor, Best Cinematography, Best Director, stars Leonardo DiCaprio, Tom Hardy, Donald Gleason, Will Poulter, and Forrest Goodluck. A frontiersman on a fur trading expedition in the 1820s fights for survival after being mauled by a bear and left for dead by members of his own hunting team.
Just want to start saying that this movie deserved every single award that it was nominated for. They deserve it all. It's so good. If you're a director, if you're an actor, if you're a producer, if you don't know anything about cinema, this is just a masterpiece. I understand why some people might think this is a slow movie, right? And some people might get bored because, we're all different. But I really think this is such a piece of art in every single way. Makeup and hairstyle, production design, cinematography, directing, writing, acting. I think everything in this movie is gorgeous. So I just want to start saying that I'm a big fan of this movie.
I agree. I can't believe it didn't win Best Picture. I expected it to that year, but it didn't win. Alejandro won. DiCaprio finally got his first Oscar, and the guy had to go through hell to do it.
He should have won for Gilbert Grape.
Yeah, he should have. But actually, the shoot was so difficult that DiCaprio took 4 years off from acting afterwards. His next movie was Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So he took a long time off because
like
it was
5
such a
years.
brutal shoot. And what Alejandro accomplished it seemed to be impossible because of how they made the movie. Because they didn't do any studio work. They didn't do any green screen. They shot on real locations. They shot in Canada and Argentina because as the shoot got delayed, they had to move down to Argentina because it was still snowy there and Canada warmed up.
Actually, they shot in Argentina, in the lowest part in Argentina, which is Tierra del Fuego, right? And Ushuaia. So that's the lowest part in Argentina.
That's like as low as you can go.
Yeah, that's probably
and then
the
it's
lowest
Antarctica.
you can go. Yeah, like a little bit under that you have the Islas Malvinas, that's a political topic over there because actually they're from Argentina, but it was a war between I don't know, the British island. I don't know how you say that. Yeah, like England.
Like, Great Britain back then.
Well, but this part is probably gonna be cut, so it doesn't matter.
Well, Britain tried to take everyone over.
Yeah, they did a lot of colonizing.
Yeah, so we had a war, but yeah, under the Tierra del Fuego, you have Islas Malvinas, right? And under that, yeah, you have Antarctica, but it's freezing there. It's nothing but super nice nature and like landscapes.
But in terms of the cinematography for this movie, it's amazing how beautiful it is and how incredible it is. And I think everyone will be surprised to know that nearly every single shot was shot with natural lighting. They only use artificial light in one scene, and it's during one of the campfire scenes because the fire and the wind was getting a little too out of control, and they couldn't control the fire. And so Lubezki put up a set of bulbs on the flames to keep a constant warm light on the actors, otherwise they couldn't see anything. And other than that one shot, there is not a single artificial light used in the entire movie.
I think that's insane.
Yeah.
I really think that if I'm not mistaken, they choose to film this movie in digital and not in film because they have one more hour of light after the sun was down, right?
Yeah.
So they were because they were shooting everything in natural lighting, that one more hour was a lot of time for them, and that's why they choose digital instead of film. But I think that's such a big achievement for Lubezki that it's insane. Shoot everything in natural lighting and make it seem not just good but gorgeous. I think that's insane.
What I think that shows is that what they're showing is you don't need all the lights in the world to make a movie, and especially to win the Oscar for best cinematography. But so I think that they Lubezki and Inarritu, they know that you don't need to have studios, you don't need to have green screens, you don't need CGI to make a great film, and so they proved that with this movie.
Yeah, it makes it feel so real. And they actually shot this film in chronological order, which is very rare to do.
That never happens.
Most movies are shot all over the place depending on scheduling and when the actors can come in, when you get the set. So majority of the time it doesn't happen. I think they did it probably because of the makeup design for Hugh Glass's character, probably to make it a little more efficient, and I'm sure the locations they were doing too.
I would say also maybe Alejandro wanted to base how he filmed the movie based upon what they filmed like the day before, and especially with long takes. And I think maybe he wanted to be a little bit more improvisational with his filmmaking rather than storyboarding everything before they get to film, to maybe just have a more free flowing cinematography and direction for it.
Yeah, which is incredible because some of the shots in this movie are, almost every shot actually is a work of art, but some are exceptional. It's like they did this on the spot. They didn't storyboard this. Like the morning when Hugh Glass wakes up from sleeping inside the horse's carcass, and there's this beautiful shot of him standing, and he kind of like thanks the horse in a way by touching it, and the sun's just shining through, but it's blocked by these trees, and there's a large tree that's dripping with water from melting snow, and it's just one of the most beautiful shots I've ever seen in my life. And they probably were just like, this is where the sun's going to rise. This is going to look amazing. Let's just shoot it right here.
That's actually correct. They based most of their blocking and set design based upon where the sun would be at certain times of the day.
Yeah, and so, I mean, they took an entire film crew and cast, and they went into the middle of freaking nowhere to film this movie.
Yeah.
So they had the elements. They're dealing with constant snow and blizzards, freezing cold temperatures, and the environment. It's just fighting back every way, kind of like how the environment is fighting against Hugh Glass's character the entire film.
Of course, if you just think about the BFX in this movie, you can totally think in the bear fight, right? That's the first thing you think of. But besides that, they spend like around 30 minutes of the film with BFX. It was just like some clean plates and arrows and snow and some muscle flashes.
Pigs.
Yeah. For an example, like basically all the animals that show in the movie, they're CGI. And there's actually one funny shot close to the end of the movie when you see DiCaprio shirtless, and he was not skinny enough for the character. Yeah, so they have to like with VFX make him a little bit skinnier, because this character has been by
Starving.
hell in earth, right? So yeah, he should be a little bit skinnier than he looked. If I'm not mistaken, we should definitely check that fact. But I'm
You're totally right, because I remember because there were always footage and shots of DiCaprio at like events or like on his yacht partying, and he had that beard and long hair, so you knew he was shooting The Revenant, but he had like a dad bod. And in this movie, he's very skinny, so I definitely think you're right, for sure.
I don't think Leo has ever worked out for a movie role before.
He doesn't have to.
He's never in shape.
He doesn't need to. Actually.
He's
his performance, nobody cares.
He's in shape for hanging with those models. That's it.
Yeah, he can get any girl in the world he wants. He doesn't have to have a perfect body.
Totally.
And this whole movie, it's about nature, and it's also about human nature, and nature, it's trying to kill Glass the whole time, and it's also trying to kill the other characters. But in a way, we never see nature kill anybody. No one gets killed by nature. No one gets killed by the freezing cold, by animals. It's just humans who kill humans. And so the human nature versus nature, and it shows that even in the harshest climates, in the most hostile environments of these battles and this trade war, you could say, humans are the real threat versus nature.
Yeah, especially Fitzgerald, played by Tom Hardy, which is a great underrated performance of his. I think that he's a fantastic villain in this movie, and I think that I love his accent. I love his physicality, and he actually was cast in Suicide Squad. If you remember, he was cast as I think the leader. That Joel Kinnaman eventually played, but he had to drop out because the production of this went twice as long as they were expecting. But I think that people will remember this movie much more than Suicide Squad.
I'm sure that was a blessing in disguise for him, because that movie is trash.
Actually, I think DiCaprio rejected it doing Steve Jobs, actually, right? In the same moment, because they were like doing the same at the time. But before that, this movie went to two different directors, and the first director chose Samuel L. Jackson to play this role of Hugh Glass. And after they changed that director, and that was like, okay, that's not going to be an option.
It was Park Chan-wook.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
the Korean
Thank
director.
you, because I suck with names. So let's just take out of the table. And the second director that probably you guys know too, he was going to cast Christian Bale for this role.
Ooh, that would have been good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been great.
That would have been good.
Yeah.
But Hugh Glass is such an interesting character, because obviously this is based on the book by Michael Punk, but the book, it's based on the person. Hugh Glass is a real guy, and supposedly some of this happened to him. I'm not sure how much of it is realistic. In the film, it takes liberties and a lot of freedoms versus the book. They Hollywoodize it and make it into an epic story. You know, in the book, he doesn't have this child with the indigenous with the Pawnee tribe, but in this film he does have this child with the Pawnee woman, and his son Hawk is so important to him, because although Hugh Glass is this ultimate survivor and he's a guide for these fur traders, what's most important to him is his family, and they show that with a lot of these beautiful shots of him like holding his son as a child and his wife. And unfortunately, he's not able to protect his wife from the fur traders and the colonizers, the Europeans who come in and burn down their tribe. And because of the death of his wife, which has been haunting him, his whole goal in life obviously is to work and support his son by guiding these fur traders, but also to protect his son. And when he's not able to do that after the bear attack, his whole purpose in life, from being a family man and also a survivor, changes on a dime. And now his entire path in life is built on revenge against Fitzgerald.
Yeah.
It was important to have the son because, like you say, it's not in the novel. He's just a tracker on his own, living a solitary life. But having Hawk and his spouse is important in this movie, because otherwise the tale would just be Glass getting revenge for revenge's sake, and it kind of doesn't have the right motivation. But when he's motivated by the loss of his son and tracking down the man who murdered his son, that gets the audience behind his entire journey for enacting revenge and gets us on his side and kind of hoping that he finds Fitzgerald eventually. So I think having Hawk gives us that personal relationship with Hugh Glass, and also puts us on his side of the situation for wanting to kill this man.
It gives them a reason to want to live, because a person who goes through what he goes through with this bear attack, how he survived, and he talks about with his son, as long as there's a breath inside of you, you keep fighting. And that's shown with the bear attack. Who would just give in and let the bear kill them? I think 99.9% of people would just be like, all right, bear, just slit my throat, end it, and I'm just going to bleed out right here. But he keeps fighting, and he ends up, even though he's getting attacked, he gets his rifle prepared and shoots the bear. And then after it attacks him again, he gets his knife out to attack the bear again before it takes him down that little cliffside. So he's a constant fighter. And because of the death of his son, that's what forces him to go through hell to survive, to get that revenge.
I think that's such a good scene. It's so real, it's so raw, and it's so violent, but it's so good at the same time. It's just nature, and he's fighting for his life. And as you said, the motivation for him to at least be alive and get against this bear is just to take care of his son, right? Because he knows that he's in the middle of this people, because he's living this duality, right? About his life as a Native American and his life as now a hunter for the colonizers, right? So he's in the middle of these two worlds. And I think the movie is not just against human versus nature, but it's also about the people who was there in that land before this new colonizers came in, like French and people all over, and destroying this land when they were like so respectful and they take care of that land, these Native Americans, and these guys just came in and ripped everything apart.
Yeah,
right?
They're killing all the animals. Yeah,
exactly, and they're not being respectful with the nature, something that you can see that Hugh Glass is, and not this the Tom Hardy character. He's like totally the opposite. He doesn't care about the nature of the people that lives there or anybody. He has no respect about the people, the animals, or the nature itself that's living there. Actually, I'm just gonna take this out of the table too. But Tom Hardy was gonna be the character of Tom Hardy was gonna be played by Sean Penn. I didn't know if you guys know that.
Yeah.
That would have been also interesting. But I love Tom Hardy, so I'm glad that he did it.
That's a great point you make about how Fitzgerald views the Native Americans. Like, he calls them savages and he has no respect for them, and he was scalped by one of them, so obviously he has that hatred for them, but he always had that hatred for them. But there's a great little moment where it shows the irony of him, where when he and the young boy are walking through that burned down Native American village, and he finds a pocket watch, and he says, "Oh, they're always stealing our stuff." Saying
that, I think that line is crazy good. Yeah.
So implying that Native Americans are always stealing the Americans' items, where the irony of that is that Americans are there stealing everything from the Native Americans. So it's a great moment, and shows the irony in the ignorance of characters like Fitzgerald.
Yeah. I think the most telling, or the most artistic shot that Inarritu and Lubezki get to kind of show how the colonists, when they came in, they just destroyed the resources of the land and of the indigenous tribes that were there, of the Pawnees and of the Ree, is the shot in like the dream sequence where Hugh Glass is walking, and he comes across that pyramid of buffalo skulls. And so the buffalo throughout North America were a robust species. There were estimated to be, I think, like 30 to 50 million of them roaming, and it was the main source of food for the indigenous tribes. And they obviously used them not just for food, but they used their entire body for resources and for tools and shelter. And when the colonizers came into North America, they completely destroyed the species of the buffalo to the point of almost extinction, where I think there were, at the end of the 19th century, there were maybe 3 million left, and it's even more dwindled now. But they're obviously keeping them alive because it's such a beautiful animal. But it was a robust animal. It roamed free everywhere. And also what they would do is they would kill these buffalo just on the spot, the colonizers and these traders, just to control the tribes and the indigenous people there so that they couldn't eat them themselves, and the meat would go to waste and they wouldn't be able to use it. And so it'd be a way to control their tribes and to deplete their resources that way.
So they would kill buffalo, let the bodies rot so Native Americans couldn't hunt them?
Exactly, or use them for their tribes and for their food.
Wow.
So it's...
Wow, that's insane.
Yeah, so I think the buffalo, it's such an important animal in the history of North America and also of when colonists came here to basically take over the land.
Wow.
Yeah, I think there's more than just Hugh Glass's revenge that ties into all that. Obviously, he's on the path of revenge to get Fitzgerald for killing his son, but also you can see that the Reed tribe specifically, they want constant revenge against the Europeans and the colonizers, because the chief of the Reed tribe, he's looking for his daughter somewhere, the princess of the tribe, and he kind of uses that as justification for tearing apart any European colonizers or fur traders he comes across, and that's his constant motivation of these attacks and just looking for his daughter, because he wants revenge. And then they even show at the end of the film, after Hugh Glass and Fitzgerald fight, and Hugh Glass basically just floats Fitzgerald's body while he's still alive down that little creek to the Reed tribesmen, and they scalp him because they don't even know who that is, but they scalp him and kill him as an act of revenge. So you could say that revenge is fueling revenge for all these storylines, all these characters, and all these arcs in the story.
Yeah, Glass and the Chief, they have the same motivation, and they're he's trying to find his missing daughter who could be murdered, and then Hugh is looking for the murderer of his son. And what happens in that scene is, because both these people are looking for revenge, Hugh decides that he shouldn't be the one that enacts his own revenge, and that the tribe deserves to get more revenge than he does. And so that's why he passes Fitzgerald off to the Chief, I think.
That's a great point.
Yeah, I never think of that, and I think that's amazing. Yeah, and that's a great point.
And I think that what makes this movie so great in terms of DiCaprio's performance is the physicality of him, because we talked about this when we talked about Wolf of Wall Street during that Quaalude scene, showing off just how great of a physical performer he is, because many of his roles are heavy dialogue, lots of dialogue. So he's always performed well verbally, but with this film, he has very little dialogue. And there's
12 lines, I think. Just in English, they have 12 lines. So that's insane.
Yeah, and so much is physical. Like watching him drag himself across the dirt, watching him deal with the pain of the bear attack, watching him trying to walk with a leg that won't support him. I think that his immense talent was translated, and he showed a new side to his talent with this movie of showing the physicality of Hugh Glass's character and his journey in this movie was why the movie works so well.
Yeah, he goes through hell. He suffers for us in this movie. And the bear scene is just one of the most horrific things I've ever seen. They filmed that with this big guy who wore this giant blue bear suit, and they obviously digitally imposed a fake bear. It wasn't a real bear. But just to watch him get torn apart to pieces, and then just how did the makeup department not win an Oscar? Because every shot of Hugh Glass's wounds, I'm just sick to my stomach, especially even when he's in like the tub getting cleaned at the end, and when he's talking to the captain at the end, just like his lips are just like torn apart and destroyed.
So chapped.
I really think the makeup it's insane. It's a movie. Like you can see through the wounds. I think there's one scene when he's drinking water and the blood is coming out from his throat, and I think that's so graphic but so good to feel like you're there and you're like actually feeling like him, and it's like, oh my god, that should be awful.
I know.
What makes the bear attack so incredible and so memorable is how they depict it, because like in any other bear attack movie where a bear attacks a character in a movie, or it's very quick. You know what I mean? It's like the bear just attacks and like swipes them, and the scenes are always very short in terms of the attack, but the attack is like 5 minutes long, and it's actually very authentic to how a bear would interact with its prey in terms of disabling it, investigating it, smelling it, just playing around with it. That's something that animals do. They'll play around with their prey. We have a cat who will do that same thing. And
he tears you apart.
Yeah. And so animals, they have this tendency to not just kill right away, and to toy with their prey. And I think that's why that scene feels so real, because it seems how a bear would really act in a situation, rather than just, swiping the throat and killing their prey. It's they draw it out, and it's prolonged, and I think that's why it's such a strong scene.
Well, actually, I think they based that attack in a video, with a video that a drunk guy fall into a cage of a bear.
Oh my
so
God.
that was recorded. Yeah, that
At a
was
zoo?
recorded. And actually, yeah, at a zoo, and he falls into the cage. And that video is, I haven't seen it all, of course, because it's quite raw. But you can see how the bear smell his back, and he's like attacking him from the back when he's laying down. So they base that attack with that video. But something actually more important than that is how this analogy in this. There's some shots after when he gets into the horse, right, to survive. But he's being super respectful with nature. So he gets in, and then he thanks the horse when he's out, as you said. But if you pay attention to that shot, it looks kind of like he's being rebirthed. Like he's like the horse
Reborn,
giving
yeah.
birth to. Yeah, exactly.
He's reborn multiple
Leo.
times in this movie.
Yeah, he's reborn
Totally.
when he's comes out of the grave and he starts dragging himself out after Fitzgerald and Will Poulter's character leave him. So even though he's kind of buried alive, he drags himself out of that grave.
Yeah, so the theme of rebirth happens multiple times in this movie for sure.
Yeah, and another rebirth is when that Pawnee tribesman who's on his own, he saves Hugh Glass by trapping him inside that makeshift shelter during the blizzard. So and then he's reborn again through that, and that's his bear hide that he has.
And that actor, he actually based that, he actually built that based upon his own grandfather's teachings. His grandfather used to be involved in Native American medicine, and that was something his grandfather actually would do. And so he based it upon his grandfather's teaching, and the film crew loved the idea and implemented it into the movie.
Yeah, and just two more things on the bear. I love how Hugh Glass starts to wear the hide of the bear, and it's left for him, and Will Poulter's character makes him that necklace of the bear claws, so it kind of signifies the strength and survival of Hugh Glass. But also, bears are terrifying. If you guys have ever seen, like, they look cute because all their fur, and they look cuddly, and they look nice, but if you ever seen an image of a shaved bear, it looks like a demon, I swear to
It's
God.
so muscly.
It's not even that muscly, it's just terrifying.
just
It looks like a monster. It looks like a monster.
Kind of looked like a demon. You're right.
Yeah, they look cute, but oh my God, I would never want to be near a bear.
Yeah, bears are some of the most lethal animals on the entire planet. And I think that we underestimate how big they are. They are massive beings, and they should not be messed with. And whenever I've gone camping a few times, and I've always just had in the back of my mind, like, I hope there's no bears nearby.
He's just part of this big, huge world that we live in, and he's not that important. I think that Inarritu represents that just by he being a little piece of the ecosystem that we live in.
That's
It's not a
yeah.
close-up. It's not like,
And he actually, Alejandro does that on very important moments. So that horse moment when he falls off the cliff, Alejandro doesn't show him land or fall through the tree or anything. He just keeps the camera up in the bird's eye view. And then also, even more telling is when he and Fitzgerald are running, when Glass is chasing Fitzgerald, Alejandro, he doesn't keep the camera on them while they run. He keeps the camera hundreds and hundreds of feet away, and you can see just trees in front of them, and then they're like little tiny specks in the frame chasing each other, where any other director would be right there with them running. Alejandro keeps it back because he's showing how big and massive nature is and how small mankind is within it.
Yeah, and also Hugh Glass is very much like the indigenous tribes in this film, where he's connected to nature. He's part of nature. He gets that relationship that human beings have, and he shows respect to nature throughout the entire film, whereas the fur traders, they have no respect for nature. They're tearing apart the animal species. They're getting their fur. They're fur traders. They only care about their pelts. They're chopping down trees. They're building boats. They're making fires. And although Glass is part of that culture and that society in terms of working for them, he's also part of nature. And Hawk kind of symbolizes the combination of both those peoples and both of those philosophies. And you can say Glass teaches him that no one will respect you because of the way you look, because you're an indigenous person to them, and the way you look, they'll treat you differently.
And also, Hawk has the burn scars on his face, which you could say represents the scar that the colonizers are causing on nature,
And the actual scars from when they took over his tribe.
Yeah, exactly. And also, what I think this movie does really well is in Hollywood cinema, it's gotten a lot better now, but if you think about Westerns in the 50s and 60s and just the way Native Americans were represented in film and cinema, they were always shown as being these killers and these villains and these very brutal and aggressive people. And although, yes, every culture, every civilization, they have histories of tribal warfare, and yes, Native American tribes fought other tribes, but for the most part, they were very peaceful people. But the way Hollywood always depicted them was as being these horrible villains. And then what this movie is showing is that even, yes, battles occurred and Native Americans did attack these European people who entered the land. Alejandro shows motivation of why these Native Americans would become aggressive with these people, why they're defending their land, why this chief is looking for his daughter, who was kidnapped. And so I think Alejandro shows motivations to help you empathize with Native Americans that we never really saw before the 1990s, 2000s.
Yeah, I think Tom Hardy's character Fitzgerald represents the opposite. He represents the evil nature of coming into these lands and taking over the resources and burning down these tribes. Yeah, and because Fitzgerald, he's such an interesting character, and he's such a great antagonist because he's so selfish, he's arrogant, he's greedy, he only cares about himself, he only cares about getting paid. He's been scalped before, so he has that hate for the indigenous people there. And he stays behind with Will Poulter's character to see Glass's fate through, but he only does it for the $300 bonus that he's going to get, because he only cares about that. And his intentions, you can tell at some point he was probably going to try to kill Glass at some point to get away as quickly as he could. And the first thing he does when they get to when they stay there is he starts digging the grave aggressively, and he's already getting ready to put Glass in there. And he also doesn't understand why Glass just won't let himself die. He's trying to explain to him, it's going to protect your boy, just let yourself go. What are you holding on to? But because Glass is a survivor, and
his boy would never stand a chance without him.
Yeah, and Fitzgerald thinks that they had an agreement where he did that blink. I don't think it was an agreement, and Glass never saw it as an agreement.
I love the fight between Fitzgerald and Glass. It's so brutal, and they really do a lot of damage to one another. And also, it's a great knife fight. Knife fights often in movies, they don't seem very realistic, and it's very Hollywoodized. And this one, it feels like it's like they're wrestling half the time, and it felt very authentic to what a real knife fight would be like.
Yeah, just as soon as the blade is close to any of the bodies, I'm like, oh my God, I'm cringing inside.
And he chops his fingers off.
Yeah, it's just, like you said, it's realistic, and it feels like an actual knife fight, what it would look like.
What do you think happens at the end of this movie? Do you think that Glass is taking his last breaths? Or do you think that he is going to survive this entire endeavor?
It's tough to tell because he definitely gets the knife wound in his leg, which obviously he's been through so much pain already and like trauma and the slashes from the bear. But it seems like that knife could have hit his femoral artery in his leg. He could be bleeding out. I think that he's going to keep surviving. I don't think it's him dying at the end of the film.
I think that he sees his wife as a metaphorically ending to the movie, saying like, okay, it's fine to come with me now, like you did what you had to do. This is probably it. I don't think he will keep surviving. I have no doubts that he could, but I think he's gonna give up eventually and come to his wife and his son.
But the movie does end when it cuts to black.
Yeah.
You hear his breathing for a few more seconds, and then in the film multiple times both Hawk and Glass say, as long as you have breath, you can keep fighting. So that could be a metaphor for he's still breathing, so that means he can still fight.
Yeah, and I love how they break the fourth wall right there. But it also reminds me of Gladiator, where he just lets himself die to be with his child and his wife. So maybe he's going into the afterlife. So it's kind of similar ending.
Great point.
He's achieved what he needed to achieve.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you with the part of the breathing. If he keeps breathing, he's still alive. And he's going to keep fighting. But it's hard to tell. Actually, I think it's up to everybody's,
just like Birdman.
It's ambiguous.
Exactly. Yeah.
We get to decide.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to some superlatives and finish up The Revenant. So who do you guys think the MVP of this movie is?
I would say it's Alejandro Iñárritu because of how intense and complicated the shoot was, how they changed continents, just how big the production was, his ability to film everything with natural light, and the use of no green screen, CGI only for things like animals and arrows, and just his direction of the entire story. I think it was just a monumental achievement in directing, so I give it to him.
I will have to share with him and DiCaprio because I think he's completely insane in this movie, and I think they have to share the prize, the award.
Yeah, I think they tie for it. Also, want to shout out the entire crew. I'm sure they all went through hell for this film and this production, but also Leo's performance is incredible. I don't think it would have been the same movie if any other actor was in this role. I know a lot of great actors could have done a good job, but I think Leo is just one of the best actors to ever live.
Yeah, the shooting of the movie was 80 days during 9 months. So it's actually, for everybody in the cast, that I heard that a lot of people had to quit because of the hard conditions in the movie. And it's completely understandable. They had to travel so much and they waste half of the day of shooting just traveling to locations. And they had to cross rivers and it was frozen and everything was so complicated. Like, if it's a complicated movie shoot in normal conditions, that's probably insane. So everybody in that crew just deserves that MVP award, I think.
Yeah, it's amazing how successful it was. It earned $530 million, which is just crazy success.
Yeah. Do you guys have a favorite line from the movie?
Yeah, I would say when Hugh Glass is speaking to the captain after he's brought to the camp, he says, I ain't afraid of dying anymore. I done it already.
That's good. I'm going to take that one too.
Yeah,
I had that, but I also had when he's quoting one of the indigenous tribeswomen are talking, and she says, "The wind cannot defeat a tree with strong roots." I like that a lot.
Yeah.
And also, it's the line that is, as long as you can still grab a breath, you fight, which is what he tells his son.
Yeah.
But overall, this is it's such an impressive movie. I think that's my favorite word to describe it. Every aspect of it's incredible. Masterclass in filmmaking. What went into it shows in the end result of how hard it was to make and complicated. And everyone poured their entire lives and passion for filmmaking into the project. You can tell.
Yeah, I think it's cinematic experience overall. And besides whatever thing that you can say against the movie, because I think everybody will have their opinion, and maybe the second act get a little bit repetitive eventually. I don't think there's anything bad in this movie or something that someone can agree in. But if you take it as it is, like a cinematic experience, I think it blow your mind even more than just taking it as a normal film.
100%. What do you think is the best shot in the movie?
I still think when he comes, like I said earlier, when he comes out of the horse and it's the shot of him like thanking the horse and just the sun pouring in, and it's just the most beautiful shot in the film.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, the opening sequence for me, it's mind blowing. It's in 12 minutes. I had to count the cuts actually. They have just 12 scene cuts in 12 minutes, right? And you have maybe in 1 minute you have 3 cuts, but in those 12 minutes you have scenes where are more than 2 minutes long, and that's not just like Birdman one shot, which is always in the studio and something more. It's more controlled, That's just a crazy sequence and a lot of extras and a lot of things going on, fights. Natural lighting. So I have to take that first sequence, those first 12 minutes of the film. For me, that's when Inarritu gets me,
Yeah. My favorite shot is when Hugh is walking across that frozen lake and it's miles and miles large, and the shot starts as this extremely wide shot. It looks like it's on a helicopter, and the helicopter flies towards Hugh Glass, and it's like a minute-long shot, and you can see just how big the lake is, the frozen lake, and then the camera gets very close to DiCaprio and shows how small he was in the frame compared to how large he becomes in the frame.
Yeah, it's a great shot.
Yeah, I think that's a great shot.
Both these movies are incredible, Birdman and The Revenant. And there's actually one little thing that Alejandro did to connect them is he has this comet or this meteor crashing to Earth in both films, which is really fascinating. I don't think it means really much in The Revenant besides just like a little nod and Easter egg to Birdman.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
But it's these two movies are incredible, and they're amazing to watch back to back because they're a lot more common than you'd think. And Alejandro Iñárritu, I can't wait to see whatever his next movie is going to be. He's one of the best working today, obviously.
Yeah, we said that he must be taking a 5-year vacation after these two movies.
Yeah, my God.
Even
insane.
more. Yeah.
How about we do some Revenant trivia?
Let's go. Leonardo DiCaprio chose to devour a raw slab of bison's liver even though he is vegetarian. He also had to learn how to shoot a musket, build a fire, speak 2 Native American languages, Pawnee and Arikara, and study with a doctor who specializes in ancient healing techniques. DiCaprio calls it the hardest performance of his career.
In Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back, that famous scene where Han Solo infamously cuts open a tauntaun for Luke Skywalker to sleep into during that blizzard was actually inspired by Hugh Glass, the character portrayed in The Revenant, in which Hugh Glass actually slept inside of a horse to stay out of the blizzard.
But yeah, that wraps our episode on Birdman and The Revenant. Thank you so much, Santiago, for joining us on this. It was so fun to talk with you, and hope you're doing well out there, and maybe we'll be able to do this again soon sometime.
Thank you guys for receiving me. It was such an honor. I think you guys do a great job with this podcast. I love it. As you know, I get in touch with you because I love your show, and I just want to talk to you actually, and you invited me to the show, so that's amazing. I really hope that you guys will receive me again. I'll be happy to be here again and be our biggest geeks that we can be.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
This was a great talk.
It was a lot of fun.
We hope you all enjoyed this episode, and thanks so much. Thank you for watching Raiders of the Lost podcast. Hit that subscribe button and notification bell. Listen to the audio format of Raiders of the Lost podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and wherever you listen to podcasts. New episodes every Monday and Thursday. Support us on Patreon at patreon.com/Raiders of the Lost podcast.